Well, hi there. Welcome back. I'm working on the steering stop or the fork stop for the Sportster here. This is something that I just wasn't able to get past. I had to do something about. I have to admit, or I have to say that I'm a little disappointed in Harley-Davidson. Great motorcycles, great product. Yes, I know it's simple, and that's one of the things we love about Harley-Davidson, and we can work on them and everything. But for all of the engineering and everything that went into building a Sportster or any other model for that matter, on the Sportster, for a fork stop, Harley thought, oh, we've got some square stock here. Let's just hack off a chunk of that and weld it across the top, not fully or anything, just across the top. And we'll make a steering stop out of that. And I love Harley-Davidson. I'm not here to bash Harley. You guys know I love the brand. But it seems like such a contradiction to everything else on the bike to just go and weld this thing on the front. I know it's behind the headlight, and I know nobody's ever going to see it. I know it's there. So I went looking for an answer. Steve at Precision Frameworx did a little digging for me and came up with this kit for an answer. Let's take a look at what's in here. The first thing I noticed, and I have had this apart, and I've checked some things, and I'm going to show you where I'm at with this. The first thing I noticed that concerned me a little bit was this fork stop kit is designed for original style hourglass fork necks only. This type of fork neck is commonly found on stock HD frames, and they have a little picture here, and I won't be able to get close enough to show you. Maybe I'll take a still of that. Anyway, so I looked at that, and I looked at the picture, and I looked at this. That is not what I have. However, I thought, Steve hasn't steered me wrong yet, and I should check this out. So the kit comes with one cover plate. It also comes with a slotted fork stop ring. And we'll get into this in a second as to how this works. But that's in the kit. There is a replacement lower bearing race. Take that out. So that comes in the kit. Interesting thing about this is the knurling around the outside. And hopefully you're going to see that. The knurling around the outside, I take it, is designed to keep this thing from turning, because this is going to become the stopper right here, this extension. So this will be the stopper for the forks. As well, it comes with 4 screws to hold this slotted plate onto your original lower triple tree. My fear here is that in the shop with a drill press, the basic tools I have, I may not be able to get this thing perfect. And with it sitting up on that little edge, I could take a file or something and knock that off, but I don't know if I'm feeling really good about that. The other thing with the triple tree, this is the old piece. I don't know if you remember, there was a tab came off of the frame here, and when you turned the bike to park it, this would line up with the tab on the frame, and you would hang a padlock in there to keep the forks from turning. So a security device, a theft deterrent thing. Just not the look I'm going for. Functional, yes, but just not as clean as I want it. So I took it off the frame. Now what I'd like to do is also round this back out to match this circle. So that's what I'm gonna look into doing here. Again, I could do this in-house. I could cut this a couple different ways, but with this being such a critical piece, and I want to make sure that the holes, that the screws are, perfectly set in there. The chamfer is going to want to hold that in place. I don't want to be just off center. As well, this has to be tapped. I can certainly tap a hole, but I'm just thinking this is a machine shop kind of job. That's where we're at for now. I will do more video and show you how this whole thing turns out. I'm going to get my hacksaw out. See you soon. Because the instructions for this this new fork stop specifically say it's for the hourglass styled Harley frames and not this style, I want to take some measurements and make sure that we've got everything right here. The things that I believe are going to be important are, first off, we've got the bearing race diameter. So I have the original unit here, and I'm just going to take a measurement there. That's reading just under 2 inches. And now if I measure the replacement unit, yep, the OD on both of these races is the same. The next thing to check, for me anyway, is we know this is going to bottom out at the same point that this one does. The height of this race is 418 thou, something like that. So if we check this one comes out at 430. So they are very, very close. So the height of the race is good. We know that's going to bottom out on this shoulder in here. So I'm going to take a measurement to, the easiest thing for me to measure to is the bottom edge of the neck here. That measurement is 555. So I'm just going to make a note of that here. Knowing that this is going to bottom out, I'd like to know now how far this stop is going to extend past the neck, because that's going to tell me how much it's going to engage into this ring that's going to get attached to the lower triple tree. So if I take a measurement on this and go from the top of the race to the bottom of that stop, I get a number of 680. So I come out with 125 thou. So I'm going to have 125 thou beyond this bottom edge of the neck. If I check the thickness of this, so the thickness of this is 195. If everything works out correctly here, when this is sitting in place, I should be engaging this slot with something close to 125 thou. Everything should work fine. So in spite of the fact that the instructions say not intended for this frame, or intended only for the hourglass frame, there seems to be absolutely no reason that this won't work on this style of frame. I should be able to take this stuff to the machine shop and see what they can do for me. All right, we got parts back from Aaron Machine Shop for the steering head or the fork stop or steering stop on the Sportster here. Just wanted to touch on this. Aaron Machine Shop, these guys were freaking awesome. They did a great job on this. The price for what they did was quite reasonable. I'm going to show you everything that they did for me. And you know, I certainly don't have the tools or the machines here to have been able to do this as well as they did it, or to do it as well as it needs to be done. There are just some things you have to trust other people to do for you. What did they do? This is the lower triple tree. So that's centered, and this pattern is centered so that I can have the short slot engaged or the long one, either way. Other modifications they made for me. I don't know if you remember or what your Sportster looks like. Mine had that big extension out here. So the guys at Aaron machined this off for me. That where they've machined it is nice. They finished it off nice. The surface that they left behind is pretty much polished as is. The original steering stops that hit on that square piece of steel at the front of the frame were here. What I've had Aaron do is machine those big bumps off. So now I'll smooth this a little bit more when I polish it. So this is a pretty nice setup. Appears to be a pretty good kit. Everything should work out pretty well. The next thing for me to do here is to install this into the neck. And what I'm going to do there, I'm going to use my bearing and seal driver kit. If you don't have a bearing and seal driver kit, boy, I really recommend getting one. They're, don't tell Karen I did this. They're not a ton of money, and you'll be able to find the one that fits for what you're installing. That one will work just fine. Then you have something, you can either put this in a press and press in on it, or you can use the handle that comes with it, install that onto the driver, and then tap it in with a hammer. I've run into a bit of a problem or a quandary here because of the stopper on this bearing cup that is going to be the new steering stop. The proper size driver will not drop down in there. It's hitting on that edge. The options I have here are to flatten off or round off the lip just where the stopper is, so that that can drop down and drive properly on the edge of the bearing cup. So that's one option. The other option is to use a smaller size, and because these are aluminum, it shouldn't mark up the cup, and that will fit down in there, and that's what it's going to do. But if I do that, I'm putting all the force on this outside edge. I think I am going to take a minute and grind off one side of this. I may even file it just right where the stopper is so that I can get a nice firm seating on that to drive it in to the frame here. So let me modify that and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so here's what I did. I flattened off a spot on the driver, and now that drops on there. I used those green marks to tell me where I had to grind. That drops in there. You can see it fits nicely on the back side. So that should drive that in nice and square, no issues. Some red Loctite on this. I'm going to be fairly generous with the Loctite. I don't think this is going to move a whole bunch. You know, it's only for when you're parking the bike. It really shouldn't be under a lot of stress. Being that this is an aluminum handle, I'm going to use a soft-faced hammer. There we go. I'm going to take a little bit of brake clean, just clean up around there. I'm going to put this together and just show you how this works. I'm sure you got the gist of it, but I just want to see how it's going to work with that piece installed on the triple tree. For now, because this will be coming back apart, I'm not putting anything on the threads. I'm not going to be torquing this down or anything. I'm thinking that probably when I put this together the final time, I'm probably going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the threads. I like doing that. In this case, these screws are captive, so I don't think Loctite's necessary because the only place they can go is against the bottom of the bearing. And I don't see that there's anything that's going to try and shake them loose. Well, I shouldn't say shake because everything shakes, but I don't see anything that's going to create a force to try and turn them out of there. And when you have dissimilar metals, especially aluminum, anti-seize is just kind of nice because you don't want it to corrode in there, bung up in there, strip the threads out when you go to take it off at some point. So that's what that piece looks like installed. Get an angle on that. For right now, I put the long slot at the back. So once the steering neck and everything is on here, that's going to drop on. And that's real nice. And you know, with the bearing in there, you know what, I have an old one here that'll do for test purposes. So with the bearing, so seated against the bearing, the stop works just fine. That, I think, is a really nice modification. The front of my neck is clean here now. It's rounded. Paint's gonna look real good on there. This is not very intrusive at all. It's going to work just fine. I'm going to leave that for now, let that red Loctite set up. I've checked it, everything's really well seated. I think it's going to be just great. Okay, we'll be assembling soon. I'm going to polish some parts. We'll be back. Thanks for watching. See you soon.